Paul can kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, even if he has to be. He handles. He brings it up the floor, runs almost like almost a point guard position at times. He can almost be a secondary point guard or primary ball handler at times. I think I just need to see it play out and get him on the floor and see what it looks like. And I think, I don't know, you guys watching the game, Joel gets, throws the backdoor pass yesterday in that game. And is that because he wants to be more of a facilitator? Yes, a little bit, but he's also just making the right play. He's getting double teamed and somebody cuts and he hits him for a layup. I mean, that's what Tyrese is going to have to do. That's what Paul's going to have to do.
That was Nick Nurse today when asked by Austin Krell about the fit for Paul George in the Sixers offense, swapping him in for Tobias Harris. Kind of a funny facial expression by Nick Nurse, almost acknowledging that, yes, we're going to be a lot better. Austin Krell at NBA Krell joins us now from 97.3 ESPN.com. Let me start with your biggest takeaway from your conversation. First with Nick Nurse, because that one was not televised. No one got to see that little interaction there. But I thought he gave some interesting, revealing type of answers with some of the questions.
My biggest takeaway is that he has a long day ahead of him because he gets on a flight to Paris tonight. So it's been a long day for Nick already, and it doesn't get any shorter in the coming hours. So hopefully he gets some sleep on the plane and he can go and enjoy the Olympics. But yeah, I mean, I went there today hoping to just be able to write on like what the schematic vision is here for this big three. Not just because it's a big three. There's been a lot of big threes in NBA history, but because it's the rare big three where you have one of the guys is a guard, other is a wing, other is a center. There's not a lot of homogeneity in the positions. There's not a lot of overlap in the positions. So how does that all come together? Does it happen quicker? Does it happen more, seamlessly, and all that stuff? And like, what is the schematic vision for, a guy like Paul George to just fit in there? And I mean, I wasn't expecting him to be like, we're going to run more Iverson action, or we're going to run more floppy pin downs and, or UCLA cuts. Like, I wasn't expecting that, but I was hoping for more of an idea of like, yeah, like we're going to weaponize backdoor cutting a lot more here. We're going to use his shooting prowess off the catch to run different diversion actions or to run different, look from this angle or that angle. And the answer that he gave was more so like, I have to see it play out on the court first to understand like how it's all going to look. And that's fair. Like, he didn't want to throw Tobias under the bus for having a bad season. But I think anyone with eyes can tell you, like, it's a massive, massive upgrade from Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to indicate, hey, as you asked the question to Paul George, hey, the 1, 3, and the 5, you have these three positions. But one of the things I thought Nurse kind of added to the equation was, well, Paul George could be a 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, he could be a point. He could handle the ball. Something that Tobias Harris certainly could not do was he did not have a great handle. But the versatility that George gives them that Harris simply did not have, I think was pretty apparent in that answer as well.
Yeah, and I think they'll test some of that. There'll also be times when over the course of an 82-game season, you'll be like, tonight your job is to just run around screens and shoot. Like, we don't need you to be a high-level ball handler or serve as a point forward tonight. We just need you to shoot a lot of threes tonight. So they're going to toy with a lot of different things here. But like, this team, and I was thinking about it today, and there's mixed reviews on the addition of Reggie Jackson, which happened just before the introductory press conferences. I'm not saying this is what happened, but I mean, put two and two together. Reggie Jackson loved playing with the Clippers. They credited them with saving his career after he got bought out of Detroit. Paul George was on those Clippers teams that he loved playing with. So you do the math and tell me how he ends up in Philly. I think it's kind of obvious what happened there. But like, they have guards, wings, what have you. They have more ball handling. They have more shooting than they've had in many previous off seasons. And there's a lot more of spurts of creativity here and there. And Paul is going to be in the mix of it, just like Tyrese and just like Joel will.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Reggie Jackson. That kind of came out of right field today. You know, he plans to join the Sixers. He'll get a buyout with the Hornets. He was kind of indirectly in that Buddy Hield move. Denver sent him in picks to Charlotte. Charlotte buys him out. Philadelphia comes here. They got Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey. I mean, what's the roles here? Where's the minutes?
So if you're asking me, I think this is a sign that Jared McCain will not be in the rotation. I think he is probably going to have to earn his minutes in Delaware and work on some things down there, and then they'll bring him along slowly. But I think the fact that you added another ball handler, another shooter, it's hard to make the case that Jared McCain is going to get minutes over more veteran players who head coaches are more likely to trust because of their experience. I will say this: like Reggie Jackson had an up and down career. More known for his offense than defense, but don't just look at him as somebody who is like a nobody on defense. 6'3" with a 7-foot wingspan, I believe. The last player that they had like that with, that type of measurable 6'3" with, with arms for days with big wingspan, that would be DeAnthony Melton. That was 6'2" with a 6'8" wingspan. I'm not saying he's defensively like DeAnthony Melton, but when you have him in the right context and in the right environment, and he's motivated, there is a decent defender. There can be a decent defender in there.
No, I was pretty surprised to be able to get a player of that level to come here at this stage of the offseason that you would imagine will be a rotational 20, 25-minute a game type of player. That's a pretty big addition here. He did acknowledge they're going to keep a roster spot open for something. So what does that leave him? One more spot to still fill?
So they have technically 2 roster spots left. The minimum for the NBA is 14. You could have 13 for, I think, up to like 2 weeks at a time, or a total of 28 days over the course of a regular season, but you really have to have 14 for the most part. The maximum is 15. So I suspect they will keep the 15th man open in case trade opportunities emerge. They'll probably keep it at the minimum 14 for a while. Would be my guess. But I think maybe that's a spot for a forward to come in. And I think, like Nick even said it today, in that press conference, again, like was not really broadcast. It was, again, I think there'll be some clips shown on TV, but like Nick said, this is an opportunity for Ricky Council to step up. Like, we have all these veteran players. There are going to be nights when there are chances for Ricky Council to step up and play minutes. So the door is not closed and shut on this being a team largely of veteran, guys in their 30s, even though Kelly and Caleb Martin and Tyrese are not in their 30s, like this is a lot of the players on this team are in their early mid late 30s. There is youth though that has a chance to be in the rotation and play some minutes for this group.
Austin Krell, 97.3 ESPN.com. Paul George was asked the same question by you about, the positional schematics of that. What did Paul George say about how he thinks he'll fit in? We heard what Nick Nurse and his thoughts on the whole pairing, but what did George say?
That's me, hunting for the hard stories, the hardcore stories, asking the same questions over and over again, hoping for a different answer. You figured me out, Mike. Paul basically said like the jab didn't change that much, and I think that's true in a lot of sense. Like, see ball, catch ball, shoot ball, defend the ball, and I think that's true in a lot of cases. But as we've seen with Team USA, it ain't so cut and dry. Like when you have this much talent and this collection of talent, it takes a little bit of time for everybody to learn this is the sweet spot. This is when he likes the backdoor cut and whatnot. But I think Paul understands, like, this is not his team. This is largely the core. The tent poles are Joel and Tyrese, and I am here to help make it easier for both of them. And he even said, like, we can see a little bit less Joel posting up or isolating at the top of the key. My job is to come in here and make his life easier and make it much more difficult for teams to throw excess bodies at him to stop him.
one thing Paul George said that, I don't know who's going to, say, hey, I have to have the ball. But he did acknowledge, hey, it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be my team. It doesn't have to be going through me every single night. He almost acknowledged it. Hey, there are different things that I could do to help Joel not have to get the ball in the same spot every single time, which is kind of different than when Tobias was here, because Tobias just couldn't do a whole heck of a lot more than what he did. I thought that was a pretty big revelation by Paul George, acknowledging that his presence should help Joel be able to do other things.
Yeah, so it isn't that Paul is going to come in here and be some, rocket science passer. He's never been a great passer in his career. But if you're going to put your best perimeter defender on Joel, that means you have a undersized guy or a mismatch on Paul George or Tyrese Maxey. And so then it becomes a domino effect of, well, one way or another, you're a defender that you do not want to have on a star is on a star, and it hurts. So the way that you remedy that is by guarding Joel straight up with his like-sized defender and let him just go one-on-one. And I think that's going to be what teams probably have to try to do at times. They do that anyway in the regular season at times because it's the regular season and then it's another game in the 82-game schedule, and they don't care if they lose by 30 and Joel has 45 and 15. But just schematically, like the Knicks put, for example, I use this example often in my conversations with friends, family, anyone. The Knicks guarded Joel successfully with OG Anunoby. That was their best perimeter defender. They put him on Joel because they knew that there was really not a lot of other offensive creativity elsewhere on the court. So let's run back that same scenario with Paul George now. Okay, so does that mean you put Mikal Bridges on Paul George? Okay, fine. Who's on Tyrese Maxey? That's Jalen Brunson.
Right.
Okay. Good luck. Could be Josh Hart. Okay. If Tyrese Maxey is on the perimeter, then where is Josh Hart coming in from to get the rebound? Because if they make that slap out off the offensive glass and it ends up in Tyrese Maxey's hands and Josh Hart's nowhere to be found, it's an open three. Mm-hmm. So I think having these types of stars and this collection of talent makes it harder for defenses to go down their pecking order and say, like, we like our options across the board. Now, like, and Tyrese even said in his own press conference, like, I want to be less switchable, meaning I want to be the guy that teams are not so hungry to switch on to me. Like, they're not looking to switch their players onto me and go to work. I want to be the guy that you don't feel so comfortable doing that.
Right.
So I do think, like, there will be nights when the defense looks sketchy as they work things out and try to untwist some things that get twisted up. There will be nights where we're asking why Paul George is taking a lesser assignment. A friendly reminder that no one in this fan base cares what they do in the regular season anymore. This isn't about that. They've won more than their fair share of games in the regular season. This is about what you do in the playoffs. And I think as was asked throughout the press conferences, like, how do you manage your team to get there healthy for the final 16?
That was a theme towards the end was, okay, what do you do to manage this with these guys? You got older Paul George, getting older Joel Embiid. Getting them to the finish line has not been easy in any of George's stops. And now, of course, Joel getting into his 30s here. So do you anticipate seeing a different strategy in the regular season?
Well, I think the Reggie Jackson thing, I was thinking about this in my head on the way home from the press conference. So, like, the Reggie Jackson thing is weird because you need more size. You would think another forward. And I get that. I also get that, like, as you're gaming out your rotations, okay, you take Tyrese and Joel out first, let's say. Then it's Kyle Lowry, who else? And Paul George, and now Andre Drummond. Well, I think you can do, I'd be curious to see if they do, like, a Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson backcourt with Paul George, Kelly Oubre / Caleb Martin, and Andre Drummond. And then the next rotation is Paul George out, Joel comes in with Tyrese, and, it's this or that. It wouldn't surprise me if Reggie Jackson is fighting for a spot in the rotation, period, let alone like significant minutes. I think Kyle Lowry probably has that rotation spot locked down because he's Kyle Lowry and he has that equity with Nick Nurse. But I do think that Reggie Jackson has proven that he can be a combo guard. So, as you're trying to figure out how you manage this thing, well, you have a lot of wings already. There are going to be nights where you were probably so far ahead where you're just resting guys flat out in the fourth quarter of games. I also think that they're going to be more conservative with, like, you have this situation with this injury. We need to be a little bit more aggressive with how we handle it. We're going to not, if it's an ankle turned, a couple games here and there. The goal is to deliver this group to the playoffs as healthy as possible. But the more you talk to people around the league, the science seems to be like load management does not. In theory, it helps limit the risk of injury in the regular season because it puts you in bubble wrap. It does not help or change the chances of you suffering injury when you are playing every other night, physical battles for 40 plus minutes in the playoffs. So does load management actually help? And I think that's a question for the Sixers scientists and their medical staff that they behind closed doors have their opinions on. But I do think that Nick Nurse said, like, we like to use training camp as a launching board for practice. And we usually start out fast with that. And I see the way that they are assembled as a team. And I think there's a tremendous amount of depth at the center position. There's good depth at the guard position. There's decent depth at the wing spots. But I do think that they're going to, in as best they can, prepare their players to play, to play 40 minutes plus in the regular in the postseason. And I don't think you do that by load management anymore. I think you do that by making sure your guys are in the best shape possible.
More on the Sixers, of course, over at 97.3 ESPN.com, at NBA Krell, and, of course, here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Austin Krell, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, there's Austin. Off-season been busy for him, and, of course, all our Sixers coverage here on the Sports Bash.